Hey, this is Coach Boyson, and in this screencast, we're going to be looking at the chemistry of life. And in particular, we're going to be looking at four main macromolecules that are found in all living things. And those macromolecules are going to be nucleic acids, proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids. And so when you look at food, you shouldn't just see the food you eat, you should be seeing these molecules. So when I look at like a steak dinner or a burger and fries, like what I see here, what I'm seeing is these four macromolecules. Now, when I say macro, I mean large. I don't mean small. Micro would be small, macro is large. And so when I see the steak or the beef and the hamburger, what I'm seeing is proteins, which are going to be the building blocks that make me who I am. I'm going to see things like the potatoes or the vegetables. I'm going to see carbohydrates that give me energy. Or when I look at and see maybe the fats and lipids in the steak or even on the fries, I'm seeing what's going to make up the cell membranes in my cells. And so it is true, we are what we eat. And so let's talk about four main macromolecules that are found not only in food, but in all living things. And so to get started though, I want to talk about this idea here so you understand the chemistry behind these. All four of these macromolecules consist of primarily three elements. And if we look at them on the periodic table down here, you're going to have hydrogen, we're going to have carbon, and we're going to have oxygen. And all three of those elements show up in all four of these macromolecules. So they're going to show up in nucleic acids, they're going to show up in proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids, all of them. Now what's really unique about carbon though, if we look over here at this Bohr's model of carbon, is we know carbon has 6 protons, which means it also has 6 electrons. And so according to Bohr's model, what we have is 2 on this first energy level, which is going to put 4 electrons on the outer energy level. Call those valence electrons. And by carbon having 4 electrons on that outer energy level, what it allows it to do is just form good, stable bonds and in chains that allow to make these large carbon backbone molecules. And you'll see when we look at lipids, I mean, it's just carbon after carbon after carbon. All right, and these are stable molecules, they're large, and they make up everything that we need for life. And so carbon's really key to that. The other thing that I want to talk to you about in regards to just this idea of these large macromolecules is this concept of monomers and polymers. And so if you look at this chart, what you'll notice is mono is going to mean one. So this right here is one molecule of a particular type. And so when we talk about, say, nucleic acids or proteins, we're going to be talking about the monomer, the small molecule that's going to link together, like what you see below here, to make what we call the polymer. So poly means many. So mono means one, poly means many, and all a polymer is a bunch of monomers linked together over and over to make a large chained molecule. So we have monomers and polymers, and those polymers are our large macromolecules. So let's look at our first one. The first one is nucleic acids. Nucleic acids that we're going to study this year are going to be DNA and RNA. Now, DNA is the genetic material. You can find this inside the nucleus of our cells, inside things like bacteria. They're not housed in the nucleus, but it's there. DNA holds the genetic material or code for who we are and the reason we make certain proteins, and we'll get that in a minute. But DNA is the large macromolecule. So what's the small monomer that links together to make up that polymer? Well, it's this one right here, which is our nucleotide. So nucleotides are the small monomer that are going to link together to make up our big molecule. And it consists of a sugar, phosphate, and a base. And when we link those together, like you can see up here in this picture here, we have a nucleotide here, 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 and here. If we go down this side, we got another one here. Sugar, phosphate, and base. Over and over, that monomer is going to link together in a chain to form our large polymer, in this case a nucleic acid. So again, that idea of nucleotides being the monomer that links together to make up our larger macromolecule, which is in this case a nucleic acid. The next one we have is proteins, and proteins are very important. They are the building blocks that make us who we are. You can see a sample of some food down in here that would represent having proteins in it. Now, proteins is the large macromolecule. So what's the monomer that's linking together to make up this big molecule? Well, it's amino acids. Now, amino acids, if we look at this chemical structure here, this amino acid, you'll notice this thing called a side chain right here. The side chains, we have about 20 amino acids, and the side chain is different for all 20 of those. What's the same is this top set of molecules and structure. You'll notice we also have a nitrogen there. Remember I said there was carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen found in all four of these macromolecules? What's unique about proteins is that you also find nitrogen. So when you're dealing with a chemical structure that's a macromolecule and you come across nitrogen, you know you're dealing with a protein. And you can see these structures down at the bottom. These protein structures, they're very large chains of amino acids, up to thousands. And then they start to fold and bend on top of each other, forming these structures, or protein structures. And so proteins are very unique. And I'll pull this up just to give you a little better idea of what I was talking about with the side chains. On each one of these, the top part is the same. We have these what we call carboxyl groups and amino groups on each one of them. They're all the same, just like what's over there in that side diagram. But the side chain is what's different. That side chain that comes off is different for each one of these amino acids. So these amino acids are just going to form a chain of amino acids linking together to form our large macromolecule, which is proteins. And to kind of put the DNA and proteins together, I love the Lego example. We know Legos, we've all played with it. You know, you always have the directions, or you have like a blueprint, or this step 1 do this, step 2, like what you see down here in the bottom left. And then you have your Lego pieces. Well, I want to relate your DNA to that Lego blueprint. And so it's like the blueprint here that has the directions for how those proteins are going to get put together to make our final product. And so if we relate that to humans or to any organism, DNA is the blueprint which holds the code for what proteins will be produced and in what way that they make the organism. So DNA is the blueprint, proteins for what proteins are made to make the organism. So just a real easy way to remember that DNA is the blueprint, proteins are the building blocks of life. Our next one is carbohydrates. Now carbohydrates, these are what give us energy. And if you look in the bottom right, we have our complex carbohydrates like your breads, your pastas. You also have some simpler carbohydrates in the form of sugar that's found like in your foods, your vegetables, and your fruits. And the large molecule for carbohydrates we actually call a polysaccharide, meaning many sugars. And so the small molecule or monomer that's going to link together to make up that polysaccharide is actually called a monosaccharide. So monosaccharides are the individual little monomer that are going to link together to make up the larger polysaccharide, which is our polymer. And you also notice I also have this disaccharide listed here. So how does that work? Well, if we look down the bottom left, I want to show you a couple monomers. We have a couple monosaccharides. We have glucose and we have fructose. And one thing you'll notice, if you add up the elements here, we have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Those actually come in a 1:1 ratio, meaning we have 1 carbon for every 2 hydrogens for every 1 oxygen. And so C6H12O6, chemical formula for glucose. But glucose and all carbohydrates will have that ratio of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. But if you look at glucose, glucose is a monomer by itself. It's a single molecule. You have fructose, which is also a monomer, and you'll notice these all end in OSE, kind of gives it away that it's a carbohydrate. If we combine those two together, and they actually do it through a process here called dehydration synthesis. Dehydrate means to take away the water molecule. It's this water molecule right here. And if we take that away, it actually joins those two molecules together into what we call a disaccharide, which in this case is sucrose, all right, which is just sugar. And now we can actually separate those two by adding water. You can see right there, adding water right back in through a process called hydrolysis to separate those two back out. So monosaccharides are the individual monomers that link together to make up our big polysaccharides or disaccharides. And so just to give you an example of a polysaccharide, in the top right we have starch. Starch is one of our polysaccharides, and it's a very large chain of monosaccharides. So I have the monosaccharide there, another monomer, another monosaccharide, on. And in this case, the example is showing you glucose, linking together to make up the large polysaccharide. So that's carbohydrates. They give us energy. And then the final one is lipids. Now lipids are like your fats and oils. And now lipids kind of step away from this whole idea of monomers and polymers just because they don't have a true monomer. But if you look down here at this structure, I'll show you, we have fatty acids, all right, and there's actually 3 right here, and you'll notice this chain. I mentioned it earlier, but lipids have It's carbon after carbon after carbon down that chain. So if you look over here at this chain, it's carbon, 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 over and over again, setting the backbone with hydrogens off of it. And so, but these fatty acid chains will link up with a glycerol, and when three of them link up there, we call it a triglyceride. So you could say the smaller part that makes up our lipid is called a triglyceride. So it's three fatty acids with one glycerol. And if you look over here, we actually have two main types of fats. We have ones that are a solid at room temperature and ones that are a liquid. Well, the ones that are a solid, we call those saturated fats, and you can see here their chains are in a straight line. And because they're in a straight line, it allows them to bump up to each other, forming a solid at room temperature. If you look at the unsaturated fats over here, like our oil, you'll notice it's straight, but then it has a bend in it here. And like this one has a bend here. Well, right where that bend is in each one of these, we have what we call a double bond. And that double bond is just causing that bend. And because of that bend, it keeps those triglycerides from being able to really bump up into each other and become a solid. And so they tend to be a liquid at room temperature. Another thing that lipids do for us when we eat lipids is they form what we call our cell membrane around our cells, and the one that does that is called a phospholipid. It actually has a phosphate group, and then it has two fatty acid tails. Just like a while ago we were looking at three, this one has two. And these phospholipids, they're right here along our cell membrane. They form that whole outer portion around our cells, forming a barrier between the interior environment of our cell and the exterior. So lipids are really important to just that whole concept of keeping those two things separate. Because you can imagine if it wasn't, because lipids are actually what we call non-polar, whereas water is polar. And so we know that when we throw a lipid into, or we throw like an oil into water, it's going to be rejected, right? And so what would happen is if our cell membranes were polar, they would just dissolve into our body. And so lipids are real important to create that cell membrane and protect our internal and external environment. So again, this was the four main macromolecules. Remember, they all consist of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. They're found in all living things. I hope that was helpful to you guys. You guys have a good day.